The Mayberry Investments Limited Virtual Investor Forum has been the standard for investor education in Jamaica for decades, where top financial minds provide comprehensive insight into the market and ideal investment strategies and opportunities for our clients. Celebrating 37 years of excellence in investment banking. The Mayberry Virtual Investor Forum. Investing in Jamaica.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to yet another Mayberry Virtual Investor Forum. I'm your host, Dan Theox, Senior Vice President of Investment Banking. Today we have a special episode where we'll be talking about Project STAR, a social and economic development initiative created by the PSOJ. Joining us are Keith Duncan, the co-chair and project sponsor, Safri Brown, the project director, Julian Mayer, the co-sponsor and project funding lead advisor, and Dr. Paris Liao Oyi, who is responsible for the data and geospatial mapping. Thanks, folks, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dan.
Good deal. Well, stick around until the end of the program, folks, where we'll be doing a special Q&A section. And I'd like to remind you guys, if you like the content, you should subscribe to stay up to date with all of our uploads. Be sure to hit the bell to receive all our notifications because we publish videos like this just about every week. And of course, if you're looking to embark on your very first investment journey, you should take that very first step with Mayberry Investments Limited. Follow us on social media today to get started. With that, I'd like to get into the company profile. Project STAR, which just launched its social IPO yesterday, is a project that has a 5-year social economic development initiative. It was created by the PSOJ in partnership with the JCF, that's the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Project STAR is driven by communities to bring about social transformation through targeted interventions. Project STAR wants to transform Jamaica into a place where everyone is valued and has the opportunity to thrive. Today, members of the Project STAR team are going to tell us all about this ambitious and relatively young initiative. Welcome again, everyone. Keith.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dan. Thanks for having us, and good evening to your viewers and investors.
Excellent. So I'll turn right over to you, Keith. I believe you have a presentation for us, and at the end of that presentation, we'd be happy to have a bit of a Q&A.
Okay, thank you very much, Dan. Thanks again for the opportunity to share on Project STAR. We're very excited about this. We believe this to be a game-changing and transformational project, which has a 5-year lifespan. We're 1 year into Project STAR, and we're very excited. We're seeing some excellent results, and we're really feeling good about what we're seeing. Just to give a little background, Jamaica having achieved macroeconomic stability, and I mean, we know as a financial sector, we worked hard to get us to a place, along with the government of Jamaica and other stakeholders, to get us to a place where Jamaica has achieved some level of macroeconomic stability. But, at this point in time, we have significant supply side constraints on the human capital side, which is causing us to, productivity in Jamaica to be low. It is causing real challenges for us in terms of skill sets. It's causing real challenges in terms of accessing labor for us as a country, for us to grow. So therefore, having been in leadership at the PSOJ as president of the private sector organization in Jamaica, we had folks building relationships with the Jamaica Constabulary Force, and the JDF as we initiated a project called the PSOJ COVID Fund. We had Dr. Paris Liao Oyi driving the data for us on that project, and we're able to get to over 20 communities over a 3 to 4 month period every 2 weeks in collaboration with the Jamaica Constabulary Force, which delivered the care packages to the most vulnerable during the lockdown period, along with the JDF that designed the logistics, along with NGOs like the Council for Voluntary Social Services, who drove the effort with Safri Brown at the leadership of our project director of Project STAR. And what we saw here was a relationship working public-private with the communities that we can deliver tangible results and actually achieve project objectives. We were very transparent around this. It was audited by the PwC, so we know we have a working model. And therefore, we decided to build on this effort. And when I became president of the PSOJ, and we sat down and we said, we need to focus on these areas. We need to focus on the root issues of crime and violence in our country, the socioeconomic issues which really cause poverty, which drive crime and violence and undesirable behavior for us as a people. And what we found was that, education outcomes are really poor across Jamaica, where 33% of our children and 56% of our children leaving primary school cannot read, right? And what we found is that also that we have to focus on education and we have to focus on community development, because there are over 100 communities across Jamaica that have been defined by the Planning Institute of Jamaica as vulnerable and volatile. So when we look at the statistics, which I just began to mention a while ago, we look at crime. We have an epidemic. It costs Jamaica 5% of GDP, or greater than $100 billion per year. I just spoke to the educational outcomes and how poor they are. When we look at the labor market statistics, it says that, and this should be updated, 6.2% of our workforce is unemployed. No, 6.6 is unemployed. However, there's over 700,000 people that are outside the workforce that have not made themselves eligible for the workforce, that are not included in the overall labor force. If we dissect that 700,000, 215,000 approximately are in school, full-time or part-time. There's probably another 100,000 that's out there that are looking after dependents, etc. So there's over 400, close to 500,000 people that are outside of the workforce that should be productive and are not productive because they just don't know how to access opportunities, or the opportunities have not availed themselves, or there's no connection. There's a disconnect between the supply of labor and the demand for labor. When you look at productivity, what drives productivity? 62% of our workforce have no formal training or certification. When we look at the MSME sector, they account for 70% of our labor force and 60% of GDP, yet only 10% of credit that is availed by the deposit-taking institutions, the banks, goes to small and medium enterprises. So therefore, there's a lot of work to be done. From a housing and urban situation, over 700 squatter communities across Jamaica, with 540,000 of our population in these centers, with very limited sanitation, water, no access, very limited access to public services, to public good. So this is where Jamaica is, and this is where the area of focus needs to be for us as a country. Having achieved macroeconomic stability, if we are to grow and get the legs for growth, we're going to have to address this area. And the government of Jamaica in itself has their plan in place, and their strategic crime plan is called Plan Secure Jamaica. It has several pillars to it. One being, the reform of the Jamaica Constabulary Force through terms of technology, mobility, rehabilitation of police stations, building out the capacity of the police force, and that has been going, and a lot of money has been invested in this area. Also with the JDF in terms of protecting our borders, and increasing the infrastructure through boats and planes and all of that to protect the border. And that's and in the legislation side with the Firearms Act, the Bail Act, the Road Traffic Act, these are all areas that are fall under the Plan Secure Jamaica. There's also a pillar called social transformation under Plan Secure Jamaica, and there has been some effort by the government of Jamaica to coordinate the efforts of ministries, departments, and agencies through the Business Security Advisory Council. They work closely in collaboration with the Citizen Security Secretariat, which has a monitoring and evaluation role of monitoring the social programs that are executed by Government of Jamaica ministries, departments, and agencies. There is also ZOSAs. There are 7 ZOSAs across Jamaica, and ZOSAs are clear, hold, and build. Many of these ZOSAs have gone through clear and hold, but the build phase in terms of real social programs, social inclusive programs, social protection programs have not necessarily gotten the have had the impact that they should have. But the effort has been made by the government of Jamaica. However, we think that there's greater possibilities to synergize, to coordinate, to pull it together, a public-private community partnership to drive this effort. There is also education, and we know of the Education Transformation Commission report by Professor Orlando Patterson that had many recommendations. And we know that last week that a report was made by the Minister of Education. Now, many might know, but I happen to get my hands on a report to say what is the plan for the transformation of education, because our outcomes are quite poor, even and the productivity that we're getting from our educational institutions is way below even our regional peers. So education is quite important. The Planning Institute of Jamaica has defined over 100 vulnerable and volatile communities, as I've said before. Now, how STAR is going forward is to build partnerships. Next slide, please. Is to build the partnerships to execute. So we have to now ensure that we're taking this public-private community partnership approach, a whole-away approach. We're focusing on the pillars of social, economic, and cultural transformation programs from STAR's perspective. So those are the key pillars that we'll be working through. Right now, we're in 3 communities: East Downtown Kingston, Rose Gardens, Parade Gardens, Sablamar, and most recently, Maypen. This program has to be community owned. They have to be a part of the design, the ownership, participation to be able to make this program sustainable. It has to be worked in a collaborative way with the Government of Jamaica agencies, coordinating SDC, HART, Planning Institute of Jamaica, JSIF, Jamaica Social Investments Fund, and the Citizen Security Bureau. So we have a technical group that works together to ensure that we are covering all the bases and they're bringing resources to bear. We're also building a working relationship with the Ministry of Education and Youth, because they have all the programs, behavior programs, early childhood programs that we need to bring to the table. Ministry of Health and Wellness, Public Health, Ministry of Labor and Social Security, because there are a ton load of social security benefits that are allocated for, but are not necessarily getting to the beneficiaries. And we need to work along with the Ministry of Industry and Commerce when it comes to the micro and small and medium enterprises, collaborating with agencies like the Jamaica Business Development Corporation. So the plan is to build out over 5 years a sustainable community development model with all stakeholders at the table, driven by the community, owned by the community, leveraging the resources of ministries, departments, and agencies, and the private sector to ensure that we are delivering a program that has the impact that it should have, and resources are optimally used and deployed, right? So we have over 52 indicators for STAR, and the critical thematic areas that we have chosen out a sample here, a snapshot, are the first one is social cohesion and inclusion. Can I ask Stafford to do this slide? Stafford, this is, I think you do more justice to this slide than I would.
Sure, Keith. As Keith indicated, we have 52 indicators for change, but within that, we have 7 short-term outcomes, 3 mid-term outcomes, and 1 long-term outcome. Our long-term outcome is that we create a Jamaica where all our communities are valued and everyone has the opportunity to thrive. And what we've done is, with the indicators, we have our activity indicators and our change indicators, which we'll be able to report on later on. So an example of some of the indicators around social cohesion might be the number of people accessing STAR programs. And so if we take an average of 6,500 people being in each community as an average, then we want to make sure that over the life of the project, that we have over 30% of the community involved in accessing STAR programs. We see what's an indicator, and we see the outcomes from that being things such as strengthened families, increased school attendance, reduction in interpersonal conflict. I mean, there are many more, but this is just a little snapshot of some of them. Around local economic development, we've obviously got areas such as employment and entrepreneurship. We want to be able to impact at least 20% of the workforce population in communities, either through upskilling, training, job readiness, certification, or direct employment. And we have actually, out of that, a full target of 10% to be moved into jobs. And we want, obviously, the outcomes to be a reduction in the unemployment level. We want to build human capital development. We want to see an increase in family household income. And we want to see reduced reliance on state support. And so the same thing with regards to entrepreneurial activities. If we can empower and support the advancement of at least 3% of businesses within each community, then again we can facilitate an enabling environment for investments, increase formalization, and therefore contribute more to the state coffers, so to speak. A big part of what STAR is also aiming to do, and this is a big area around the sustainability, is to make sure that our activities are community-led and community-driven. And so how we track that and show that is happening is, one, we look at the number of communities we're entering. We're in 3 now. We aim to be in at least 10 over the period. Number of residents involved in the consultation process, but also number of residents involved in the community planning process. Because the STAR model is that the communities work to identify the strategies that will solve the root cause issues that have been identified through data such as that which Paris will share shortly, and then the other indicators that the community has. And again, once we're able to do that, then we know that we will end up with increased participation and inclusion of community stakeholders, that residents are more empowered and able to advocate for what they need. And that there's a sort of creation of stronger, more socially cohesive communities. And so these are just some of the key indicators that we're looking at, that we want to report on through the Jamaica Stock Exchange, but also Social Stock Exchange, but to identify that we have many more indicators. And then over the lifetime of the project, so these are more now of the change indicators, which take a little longer to be able to report on. We want to see a sustained reduction in major crime of 40% in our STAR communities. We want to model that. We work closely with the JCF, with the Citizen Security Safety Branch, to make sure that we're able to help mainstream these approaches. And we believe that can be achieved by really focusing on economic transformation and social transformation. Within the context of economic transformation, our goal is to make sure that we increase employment levels in communities by 10% of the population, that we engage through support 3% of the business community. Once we do that, we believe that this filters up into national goals. We're able to satisfy national workforce requirements and capacities to expand by showing this model. It impacts both community-based and national socioeconomic indicators, and it leads to increased business confidence and opportunities for growth, because we know that there are a lot of issues with regards to crime, security, access to human capital, access to quality human capital, and so on. And so we think it addresses it that way. Around social transformation, obviously, we want to increase access to social programs and make sure that 30% of the community are accessing the programs that are being implemented by STAR through our partners, through the community. And if you do this, then we believe this contributes to safe, sustainable communities that are able to support our national development goals. And so we have to remember that everything that you do at the community level invariably feeds up to the national level and contributes to national change. Keith, back to you.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, what we're building out is a sustainable community development model that will endure beyond the life of STAR. And that is what we are working towards by working together with the ministries, departments, and agencies, community-led. It all comes together into a community development model that is sustainable. Just at that point, I just want to reinforce the national impact, as we said, reduce crime and levels of violence, the labor force as Safri spoke to, and upskilling the workforce. And that's, I'll hand over to Paris now.
Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Dan. When we begin to look at the data in terms of beginning to drill down into how we're going to actually do this thing, you can change the slide, Safri. We really have to begin to look at an all-encompassing socioeconomic crime and violence profile in one. What you're seeing right now are the 3 active project areas in East Downtown Kingston, Savannah Lamar, and Maypen Western Maypen that's being activated right now. Savannah Lamar, East Downtown Kingston is Rose Garden and Parade Gardens. Savannah Lamar is 12th Street, Newmarket Oval, Seaton Crescent, and Shaolin Grotto. Maypen is Denby and Treadlight. These areas are part of the larger Maypen, larger East Downtown, larger Kingston, and larger Savannah Lamar areas. But we have to make sure that the project and our execution is doable. We have logistics concerns in terms of mobilizing our field teams, our assets on the ground. We can't bite off more than we can chew. And these are the areas that are defined as being doable, both in terms of size and in terms of the resident population in these areas. What you're seeing, sorry, could you go back up? What you're also seeing here is a heat map of vulnerable communities. This is not a crime map. Anything orange and red are areas of concern, vulnerable areas. Vulnerability here is defined as concentrations of 3 years worth of crime, 3 years worth of violence being violent injuries reported to the hospitals, not necessarily the police. Combined with police data, major crimes, which is murder, shootings, robbery, rapes, and aggravated assaults, plus violent injuries from the hospital, which is blunt force trauma, sharp force trauma, burn attacks, and shootings. Combined, we are able to get a picture of crime and violence. But we also begin to combine the socioeconomic variables of unemployment, of educational attainment. We also look at people on welfare. We look at young population, old population, etc. Combined, where you have the anything orange or more, these are where you have the greatest concentration of crime and violence and negative socioeconomic incipient conditions. Next slide. And then we begin to look at the crime is one variable, but it's an active one that people can readily refer to. The red numbers that you see there is national average of population, national average of crime in 2020, 2021, 2022, and so on, the crime rate, etc. And you will see in East Downtown Kingston, Maypen, and Savannah Lamar that the values in those communities is significantly above the national average. This is not a surprise to us, but we're able to use this to determine our own KPI and performance. But before we begin to drill into that, looking at the wider regional environments of our project areas, the wider Downtown Kingston, which includes East Downtown Kingston, has the highest number of crimes, major crimes over the last 2 years, and also the fourth highest in terms of violent injuries reported in the hospitals. Spanish Town is number 2 and 2. Maypen is the fifth highest in terms of crime, major crimes, and the third highest in terms of violent injuries reported in the hospital. Montego Bay, where we're going to be looking at next, is number 3 and 1, and Savannah Lamar is 9 and 5. So again, we're looking at the top 10 communities, top 10 regions in Jamaica, and we are smack dab in the middle of these areas. I also want to draw your attention to the crime pattern certainly in East Downtown Kingston on the graph, where you see that crime is down 55%, 2022 over 2021. This is directly as a result of the zone of special operation that exists in the Parade Garden area of our East Downtown Kingston project area. So it's not all of our project area, but it definitely seen a significant downtick in crime year over year. And in Savannah Lamar, the crime is down by 42%. So ZOSOs are having an effect. ZOSOs ZOSO in Savannah Lamar is active in the southern area of our East Downtown, our Savannah Lamar project area. There is no ZOSO in the Maypen area, and crime in Maypen is slightly creeping up, but overall, crime patterns are trending downward. The key thing here, though, is to remember that this is a police intervention with a crime outcome, a crime reduction outcome. ZOSOs are intended to have a clear, hold, build objective, and what we're seeing here is the benefits of the clear and hold, and we need to come in with the build. And by build, we're not just talking about physical infrastructure, but we're talking about building relationships, building opportunities for the people in these communities to take charge of their own destinies. Next slide, please. So then when we begin to look at the model to set the KPIs of how are we going to do this thing, we look at what happens if and when the ZOSOs are removed. We do not want to lose the benefits of 55% reduction in East Downtown and a 42% reduction in Savannah Lamar, and everything bounces right back up to where it was before. What we have seen, Dan, is that from our ground surveys, people in the ground, in the field, doing active work, they see that one of the number one causes of concern for residents in these areas is the fear of crime. So if crime is down by 55%, but fear of crime is still the number one cause for concern, it tells you that this thing is still very real to people. Once the ZOSO is removed, the fear that this thing goes right back up is significant. Issues of employment, issues of education, issues of sanitation will remain unless something is done on those fronts as well. Next slide, please. So in terms of our modeling here, if and when the ZOSOs are removed, we can imagine then that the crimes will bounce right back up. What we need to ensure as Project STAR is to ensure that at a minimum, we hold the gain of the ZOSOs. We keep the 55% over 2021. We keep the 55% reduction over 2021 in East Downtown and the 42% in SAB. But what we really want is a further 40% reduction in crime after the ZOSO is removed. So in other words, we can do this thing. The police have been able to bring about these types of reductions by themselves. We now need to concretize that and actualize it through crime intervention programs. Next slide, please. So this absolute numbers, these are the rates. It's the same general pattern, but we are setting ourselves targets based on these minimum performance. Next slide, please. This is my final slide. Oh, sorry. I just want to very quickly show you the demographic profile of our STAR communities. Again, it's broadly similar to the national profile. You do have a significant proportion of young people versus the working age population. However, in the STAR communities, the young age population is just a little bit greater than the national. And that tells us that, we do have concern, not just about education, providing educational services and pediatric services and so on, but we also do have to think about future employment needs in these areas as these young people age out into the working age group. And this is my final slide. There's a very important observation that we're making right now and the difference between unemployment and employment, because there's a huge gap between people who are unemployed and people who are employed and people who don't want to be employed but are of working age. These are the unattached people. These also these do include students in university and so on. We do include housewives in this age group and so on. But we do see a significant amount of people who are not making themselves available for the labor force. Whether they've given up or they're not trying or whatever, we need to activate this level of people. We do see high unemployment levels, but even in the Maypen area, where we see only 5.6% of the working age population have declared themselves as being unemployed. When you add 5.6% to 46.7%, the rest of it are the people who are outside the labor force. They're not unemployed, they're not employed, so that is a significant number. But in terms of everything else, we do see the crime and violence patterns being the ones that are significantly above the national average. In other areas, we do see variation and fluctuations in poverty characteristics, in unemployment characteristics, education characteristics, and so on. But my final point here to share with this group is the fact that any improvement in education, any improvement in unemployment, etc., is going to have a positive impact on the crime rate. In other words, reduction in the crime rate. Crime is dependent on these variables. You can have a reduction in crime, but if there's no consequential reduction in poverty, education, employment, etc., you're going to have it's not going to make much of a difference. It's not going to be sustainable. Thank you very much. I think I shift over to Safwin now.
Yes, thanks so much, Paris. STAR has been we've just celebrated our first year at the end of May. And I just want to share with you some of the work that's been achieved in our communities. I'm going to look at East Downtown Kingston more closely because we've been there for 7 months. We've been working in the community for 7 months. But during this time, over the last 12 months, we've really focused on a number of things. We've really focused on building out a model for community-led development. And we have that really delivered through our community intervention teams, which are made up of the police, our local teams, STC, and other local partners. And they meet every 2 weeks in the community to go through the strategies. We then have our community governance structure, which is a community transformation board, which is made up of our community-based organizations, local school principal, church, local businesses. They're the ones that are really helping to identify and drive the strategies at the community level. And they're working now, for example, in East Downtown with SDC to do the community transformation plan, which is a whole community plan that the entire community provides consensus on before we're able to implement it. And so that's some of the work that's been happening down there. But within the context of that, we've still been able to move on some very quick, what we call quick win projects. And I'm going to talk about those in a second. We've also been able to develop really strong partnerships that allow us to improve our overall planning and the way that we work in a more collaborative environment. One is a technical stakeholder working group, which is made up of the ministries, departments, agencies of government. And the other one is through very important operational MOUs with entities such as HEART, SDC, JSIF, UNICEF. And they really work with us in a lot of the delivery that we do on the ground. We've been able to establish our local teams and our local partners to drive the action. And it's really important to note that we also have in place a really robust reporting and accountability framework. We mentioned earlier our sort of indicators that we look at, but also we do provide internally, we do a monthly report, we do a quarterly report that's open to the public. We're currently doing our first year-long report, our year in review, but also by listing on the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, we also have monthly reports to submit to the JSSE, quarterly financials to report to the JSSE, and this is for the life of the project. And so STAR has a very, very high level of accountability and a very strong governance structure in place. We have an oversight board, which is co-chaired by Keith Duncan and Major General Anthony Anderson of the JCF. We have a management monitoring reporting committee, which is co-chaired by Ian Nita and Taryn Hand of KPMG, and a subcommittee legal and contracts, which is chaired by Peter Goldson of Mice, Fletcher and Gordon. And so we really have robust systems in place to really help guide us, and a very technical project implementation unit that helps us with real technical advice. And this is where Paris is involved, Dr. Deanna Ashley of the Violence Prevention Alliance, Lauren Pert of Blue Dot, Dr. Nadia Figueroa, who really works with us very closely on learning, and then Dr. DCP Kevin Blake out of the JCF. So we have a really strong group there that really helps us with that kind of technical application. So within East Downtown Kingston, which is Rose Gardens and Parade Gardens, we're starting to see a lot of change now happening very quickly, and the momentum is really picking up. So I'll just talk about a couple of key areas. Through our focus on economic development, we've really been able to start increasing economic sufficiency through training and employment. We have focused primarily on employment, being private sector led. We've done a number of training sessions with HEART, who is our partner on this, job readiness training. As part of that, we make sure that we support community members with getting interview skills and resume writing. And as you can see on the right, a supervisor, we call a supervisor. We also work with Dress for Success to help get our participants attired so they can go on their job interviews and they can have some outfits for the first few days of work, because that's one of the barriers to people going and accessing jobs. We help them with their documentation and so on. We've been able to get, well, the number has now gone up quite substantially, but we've been able to get 48 residents from East Downtown trained. The majority of them are now in jobs. What we're also really excited about is that 96% completion rate. So once they start the program, pretty much everyone finishes, which shows a commitment. And of course, the result is that we're able to increase employment and employability of residents. On the left is Akeem. Akeem very much wanted to be a stevedore driver. He's now working at Kingston Terminal, learning doing lashings, learning to become a lashings operator, supervisor, and so on. And this was his dream. And as a result of now being empowered and working in the field that he's always been really passionate about, Akeem comes forward all the time to volunteer and support the work that's happening in the community. And so he's adding real value within the community now, whilst he's able to also improve his own outcomes. When it comes to the work that we want to do around financial inclusion, so far we've been able to support about 330 residents with improved financial inclusion. And of that, 218 were actually provided with vital documentation, whether it's a TRN birth certificate or their food handler certificates, which many of them hadn't gotten, or they needed to finish training. So we were able to do that training with a STC and SERHA to make sure that they're able to access that. And so making sure that people are accessing their documentation allows them to not be hindered by these barriers that creep up over time. And then as it comes, this really helps us create opportunities for economic pathways that really open up for residents. So when opportunities do come, they're able to access it. When we look at sports, so we really utilize sports as a key strategy for community cohesion, but also as a key activity to be able to start engaging people in programming that can then lead to other ways, other things such as becoming involved in sport, in employment programs, training, and so on. In East Downtown Kingston, the community was very quiet prior to start. There were no real sort of activities happening in the street. There was no regular sporting activities. We've been able to work with the communities to make that happen. And so far, we have about 450 residents who are involved and engaged through sports. And within the space of 7 months alone, there have been 61 sporting sessions held in the community. That's a huge number for a community that had gone very dormant. And so what this means is once you're able to really engage young people through sports, you're able to open up opportunities for further engagement and further development of young people. And so this is an important component. And we're finding that people are accessing our programs through sports. So that photo, Keith and these young men, Geraldine and Mario and Clinton, Curtis on the right. This was a tournament that we took them to run at Football Factory. And then Keith gave us a talk on the employment program. And these young men had been really coming and playing football every week, but not necessarily stepping forward into any kind of formal program. And after that discussion, because we had built trust, because we had built rapport, all three of them signed on for the employment program that started the next day. They completed the training, and just like Akeem, they all got involved in volunteering and really contributing. And a number of them have been placed in really quality jobs. So we're really excited to see this work really starting to result in these kinds of changes. Around children and family-based support, we've been able to get support for about 283 families through whether it is improved parenting, parenting training, or the school-based programming, such as the school feeding program. And if we look at the school feeding program alone, what we're finding is in the 4 ECIs, early childhood institutions, that we have a school feeding program, which is really facilitated through mussons and rainforests. That it's increasing general attendance, because one of the critical issues that the community identified is that school attendance in the children in early childhood had really been affected badly by COVID and hadn't recovered. And what we're finding is that this is already having a positive impact on that. We've also done work around social welfare, really engaging with the elders who have been very much isolated. And for those who are vulnerable, those across the board, people are involved that need some kind of psychosocial counseling and therapy. We've been able to provide that through our partners for about 142 residents. And what this means is that we're really reducing vulnerabilities. And as you reduce vulnerabilities, you also therefore create more of a sustainable change. The police is a key partner, as you know. They have been working closely with us at the community level, and they have continued to demonstrate their commitment to community policing approaches. And they do this through the community intervention team, through some police-led activities. They recently partnered with the Community Development Committee and the SDC in. So I'm nearly finished. And so with regards to the work around community development, we've had over 800 people participate in consultation, which is really, really important. And also just over 15% of the community within the first 7 months have been engaged in STAR activities. Remember, our target for the 5 years is 30%, and we're at 15% already. And what's really exciting also is a lot of the activities are community-led. There have been 18 community-led activities. Labor Day, they had 5 alone. This is really showing an indication of readiness on the part of the community to participate and drive the outcomes at the individual and community levels. And so this is a huge, huge part of what's really being able to propel STAR forward. And the more that we're able to ensure that the community leads it, is the greater the pace and thrust that the community will be able to move. And most recently, we've been doing our work in SAV. And in SAV, we've really been focusing on entrepreneurship and infrastructure because those are the main issues that they're facing as a community that's been in a state of stagnation for many decades in terms of the sort of economic activity. They've really created a big sort of entrepreneurship system. So we want to be able to support that. And we also need to look at the infrastructure. So we've been working with the folks of St. Mary's Fishing Village to really look at that, and then working with the MDAs in the space to establish a community infrastructure working group because there's such inadequate infrastructure around drainage and sewage, lighting, roads. All of this work needs to be done. And so what we're seeing there is real kind of community enterprise action happening and planning starting to take place. And so at STAR, we really believe that if we come at this from the direction of social, cultural, infrastructural, and economic change, we believe that we'll be able to have a really, really positive impact on crime and violence. And we're starting to see those results already. So Julian, your time.
Hey, Saffron. All right, thanks. So regard to the funding side, and specifically what our targets are, we're looking at raising approximately $400 million in total for the project. Or the JSC listing, we're looking at a target of roughly $650 million. We've already started, of course, with the corporate funding, and the target for that is $400 million, and we made a significant dent in that already. Diaspora and multilateral are to come, and we still and will be targeted further on in the year. So for year one, we're looking to do approximately $100 million on the social stock exchange, and that's the launch. That's the IPO launch I would have initiated yesterday. So we are extremely pleased to acting as co-brokers for the transaction, and to name them, we have Burrito, we have FHG Investments, we have GK Capital, we have GN Fund Managers, we have Mayberry Investments, we have NCB Cap, we have Proven Wealth, we have Sagicor Investments, we have VM Wealth, we have JMB Securities. So having this broad cross-section of broker dealers on board and having their full commitment and access, therefore, to their investors, we expect that that this $100 million target will be achievable. The very unique aspect of this transaction, or the way that we've positioned this funding, is that we've chosen to do an IPO for social shares. To our knowledge, this hasn't been done before, not in the region, and we have no evidence of it happening anywhere else. But we think for Jamaica, it's an extremely important component. What it does is it brings together those who are extremely good at raising money and have them support to funding those who are extremely good at doing social work. We think for Jamaica, it is important that investors get the opportunity to recognize that their contribution can make a meaningful dent in the challenges that we have with the unattached youth, with marginalized communities, and with crime and violence. So we've been working with this overall concept of 10,000 people, $10,000 gets us to $100 million. We know currently there are about 280,000 unique investors in equity today, right now in Jamaica. And the 10,000 therefore represents a meaningful but a small component of all of them. And the $10,000, of course, we think is something that's attainable. We have made the target or the requirement, the low bar threshold, $500. So the minimum contribution is $500, 500 shares. That, of course, is something that we know to be a threshold that most can satisfy. And then we've gone ahead and partnered with everybody who is in the financial sector who can help support acting as conduits for the raising of funds. So we have the bankers, the Jamaica Bankers Association, all the commercial banks are on board. We'll be able to have direct deposits to accounts. On the social IPO side, all the broker dealers that I just mentioned are on board. They've made their platforms available, and their platforms are now live. And people are making contributions right now over them, and we're quite pleased with that. We have the JSSC's platform that allows for another conduit for direct investment, and also investment that will give you your social shares, which are reflected in your JCSD account, your investment account that holds all the rest of your equity positions. And we have also the directly on Star and the straight corporate donors. So what we've done is we've made sure to target the easiest possible conduit for everybody to invest, and we've given a threshold that we know is attainable. So, Dan, it's one of the biggest challenges Jamaica has, right? Not only the social issues, but how do you get money direct to social issues? And very important for investors, how do you feel accountable? How do you feel that there's some level of accountability, that the money that you put towards a social good actually gets there and actually has a result? So by listing on the JSSC, what we're doing is ensuring that we tick all of those boxes to make it easy to invest. We already tied in with all reports requirements of any listed company. All of those reports will flow directly through the JCSD, through the depository. So investors don't have to go and search for the information. You'll be clear. There's clear guidelines as to what it is the project is seeking to achieve. And then the KPIs will show you what it is that the project did achieve. The program is audited by PwC, and therefore we know that we have credible accounting that will be provided. JSSC itself requires monthly reporting, and the STAR program has chosen that level of accountability, which is higher than for listed companies on the Jamaica Stock Exchange. So the bar where we have set for investors to see what it is that their money did is a very high one. We're committed to it. And the STAR team is moving in that direction at full speed. So we're really excited about it. And I know that the term I'm using as far as investors, may cause people some confusion. I really do want to make sure it's really clear, right? You're investing in social change. That's what you're investing in. Your return comes from the social change that is achieved. Reporting on that is what is delivered to you. You won't be getting dividends on the STAR social shares. You won't be trading them and making them pop. I know IPOs often mean it's going to pop. That's not it, right? In this instance, we think that there's going to be a massive impact positively on the social, and we already see it in the communities that STAR has entered into. This is not a startup, and that's one of the things with startups. Startups have a great dream, and you wonder, will they achieve it? I like the vision, I'm going to buy into it or not. And then you'll see how that performance occurs. In this case, STAR has been up. STAR has been operating for a year now, and they've adopted a model that was in force from prior to COVID and put in place down in Salt Springs, where massive reduction in crime occurred. So we know that the model works. We know that the outcomes that are targeted are going to work. We know that right now the job creation is working, and we're asking people, therefore, to invest in this going concern and to be able to measure that the growth that the company, that the initiative is seeking to achieve will be achieved. The return comes from that improvement in society. And we do want, as investors, you to recognize that this ties directly to your general investment thesis, which is you're putting no money, you're making investments for a better tomorrow, for yourselves, for your families. Ultimately, the environment within which you live is impacted by these social factors. This is part of what has degraded some of the quality of life of a lot of our people. This is part of why a number of people look for the closest plane and a visa to go and find another place to go and live. We want to live here. We want to make Jamaica better. And the Star Social Shares is a big component of that. We want the investors, therefore, to be a part of the change and to recognize that their investment can help to change the tide of crime, the tide of hopelessness, the challenges that we're seeing in education and unemployment, that they can make that difference. So we give a lot of thanks to all that have come on board as co-brokers. We shared our appreciation with the Jamaica Stock Exchange and all of its arms, to the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange, to JCSD, the JCSD Trustee Services, who have all come on board and put significant work in to ensure that we can do what we're doing right now, which is launching a social initiative as an IPO, tying together those who are best at raising money with those who are best at using it for social change.
Yeah.
So Dan, I think you had a fulsome presentation a while ago from the team.
Very fulsome.
And I think it's your show. We're back in your hands now.
So Dan, just to make one point, right?
Sure, Keith.
Now, what I have seen, and I am not a social practitioner, but I've been working along with Safri Brown, project director, and the working practice. What I've seen on the ground, when you have all of these social activities occurring, sports, social programs, social inclusion programs, homework centers, early childhood, taking care of the adults, when the community and people going to work and people being formalized, when people across the community see this, they begin to own it. And as a result of it, nowadays, it becomes organic and they own it. So as a result of that, what we're seeing now is the community starting to breathe, to come to life. And Rosetown, where there's no ZOSO, where STAR has been operating, the police have said that over the past 3 months, and we've been there for 7 months, and we had to build the trust as we enter the community, that there has been one gunshot that has been fired in the past 3 months. Now that, things can change because, there can be an upsurge here or there, but there's a much more cohesive community, right? And we have a replicable model that we are building out here, right? And because we have people on the ground through our social workers, who is a permanently employed, a project officer, community liaison officers that work in the community and pull together the ministries, departments, and agencies working in a very cohesive manner, so the impact is felt on the community. This was what was missing in these communities, and that's the difference that we're making. And the community love it, appreciate it, own it, and they are now driving it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that. I really do appreciate the presentation, which gives us great context to the Project STAR and what you guys are trying to do. And I really want to commend PSOJ for this innovation and for leading this process, Safri for the great work you've been doing for the past year, Paris for your contributions, and Julian for helping to structure the transaction. From a Mayberry perspective, listen, this is a no-brainer to us, team, that Mayberry wanted to come on board as a co-broker and support this transaction, because we too fully appreciate that creating wealth in our country is more than just having successful IPOs and putting money in people's pocket. It's about creating an environment that's sustainable, and we think you guys are spot on. So we're happy to lend our full support to the project. So, just for 2 minutes, I do want to speak to our investors. And Julian, you said it. So this is not about investing to enrich yourself specifically, guys. This is about investing in Jamaica, land we love. And we want to have a country where we can raise our kids and all prosper and do well. And this social intervention is so extremely important. And, I'm really tired of folks sitting down and saying, well, we have to wait on the politicians to lead or whatnot, right? So I think as a country, we have enough wealth within us that we have to try to focus on building the talent that we have. so often guys think about the reggae boys and the great talent we have in Jamaica, but we can't, sponsor a proper football league to build that talent. And the only way that talent really gets developed is by going overseas to play in leagues. And it's not for a lack of resources in Jamaica specifically, but it's for a lack of great initiatives like this. So I, again, want to commend you guys for a great initiative and just make a couple of points really. The transparency and accountability that this program brings is, phenomenal. And you said it, Julian. And so I'm excited about it. The idea that you guys want to raise 100 million in the first phase. You're very clear on the 3 communities that you're working in. You want to expand to 10 communities, have very clear KPIs. You've brought on Dr. Paris Liaoyi to track the data. So we have a very objective way of analyzing the impact that we're having. And you guys, again, are spot on when we talk about the Zozo and this idea that there's a clear hole but no build. Again, we have to, work in that program. Keith, I think about the work you did previously with the, what was this financial thing you guys created? Epoch? And again, how we transformed Jamaica and the accountability of the government through EPAC. And in the last 7 years, we've had, an economy that's basically thriving, one of the greatest recoveries and comeback stories from COVID, but it started because of the transparency and accountability. And so I think this is a great way for us to look at social intervention programs, bring that same level of transparency and accountability. I think it's great that it's led by the PSOJ because we really need to try to get everyone to appreciate the importance of investing in these types of social intervention programs, paying it forward. And I like how you guys use the forward slogan a lot because, it's extremely important. I like the approach and the analysis focused on the high crime areas, the communities where we think there's a lot of volatility and vulnerability, because once again, folks, we have to be serious about investing in Jamaica land we love. So I'm fully behind this. I'm calling out all of our Mayberry investors and clients. 100 million is not a big target. If this were an IPO, it would sell off in a day. And so I hope that this social intervention program, this social listing will sell off very quickly because 100 million isn't a big raise. And for the benefits that the economy stands to gain from this, if we get it right, starting small, 3 communities, then 10 communities, and expanding it, I mean, the benefits to come from this are just, unfathomable, quite frankly. Again, I do like that it's data driven. It's one thing to say unemployment is 6%. It's another thing to say there are 500,000 people who aren't in the workforce, who aren't necessarily looking for jobs, and it's perhaps a skills challenge. It's another thing, again, driven by the data, to say 62% of our workforce has had no formal training. So Mayberry is fully behind this program, Keith, I assure you, and I'm confident our investors will be fully behind it as well, too. And folks, again, I want to encourage you, this is a great IPO to invest in for the good of Jamaica. And 100 million raise is really very small in the overall scheme of things. I like the community ownership approach as well, Keith and team, that you guys are taking, and the need for partnership and collaboration, and then the high level of accountability that you're going to bring in terms of reporting back to the Jamaica Stock Exchange on what you're doing. And there's no politics at play here. Again, I think of Epoch. There's no politics at play here. You guys are working with the GCF and a very strong focus on getting to the root cause of the problem. And when I say it's a socio-economic problem that we're suffering from, this is to say, to make it simple, it's just not about money, but about the cultural and social environment and atmosphere within which folks are living. And so again, by targeting those high crime areas, highly volatile areas, I think it's a great strategy. And we see very clearly that there's a high percentage of youth in those communities. And so we really want to get in there early and create options for folks, encourage them in terms of social skill training, upskilling, and so on and so forth. I think it's a great program, and so we're totally 100% behind it. Now, there are folks out there who are wondering about, you know, what return am I going to get and what profit am I going to get? And again, I just want to repeat it. We're investing in growing Jamaica, building on the country that we all love, so that when we have our wealth, we'll feel comfortable going out and enjoying it and not worrying about, I can't go 100 yards up the road without there being some kind of zoos or whatnot. So again, Keith, I commend you and the team for what you guys are doing here. Mayberry, I can't say it again, is 100% behind it. And I'm sure we will be able to bring lots of big sponsors behind it too, Keith. And you have my word that we're going to push for it. I think this is a perfect fit for folks like GPS, where the country loses 28% of its power, most of that due to theft of electricity, and that's costing us, $300 billion a year. And the problem, again, that we identified, and I happened to work there for 16 years in my former life, is it's really, again, a social economic challenge. We have over 200,000 folks living in informal settlements where access to capital is difficult, access to just proper infrastructure to be able to wire their homes in the first place. It's difficult, high levels of unemployment, low levels of education, and it results in people, unfortunately, turning to stealing electricity. And then what we've seen in those volatile communities is this kind of becomes a cultural issue because it's like a starter crime. They start thinking it's okay to steal electricity, it's okay to steal water, it's okay not to pay rent, it's okay not to pay property tax, it's okay, and we develop a hustling culture. So I do think it's great what you guys are doing, going in, working with the communities, creating structure, creating accountability, and then trying to sort of re-educate and reprogram folks to appreciate that there are other legitimate options for them. And we've seen some of the success that you mentioned, Safri, already in East Kingston, creating jobs for 58 persons, et cetera, et cetera. So we're 100% behind it. We're going to lend our full support, and I'll be batting to have folks like GPS. I can also see Supreme Ventures. Gary, you're going to be getting the call from me. Supreme Ventures and the Chase Fund and whatnot, again, supporting these types of programs because I just think it's a really great program. So, Keith, I'll leave you with some last words in case you have anything else to say. I really do feel the presentation was great and it should be crystal clear, and hopefully folks appreciate that Mayberry is 100% behind.
So let me, Dan, thank you very much, and thank you for your words, and thank you for your support to Dan. What I would say is that this program is that it's the bill for this, the budget, the cost that we have projected for this is $2 billion over the 5 years. And what we have been able to raise so far in multi-year commitments is $300 million from corporates, of which Supreme Ventures, JMB, Sandals Foundation, Carreras, Panjam, and a number of other entities, restaurants in Jamaica, etc., have come on board, and a number of others, and I might miss a few names, and I apologize if I do. NCB, Sagicor, Finance, Bank of Nova Scotia, all of them have come on board to get us out to the ground in multi-year commitments. So therefore, and that's $300 million that we have received. And what we're doing now is looking now to go to the public now to say, come on board, be a part of this. We're transparent, we're open. You'll get your reports on your Central Securities through your Central Securities Depository. We'll be reporting to the public, and the public we want all of Jamaica to come on board. We are accountable. We want to be an example. We want to develop this model that is replicable right across the country.
Excellent.
So thank you very much again. Thank you very much for having us, and we're on it.
Excellent. And so it's open as we speak for as little as $500. You folks can get a piece of this action. So with a $100 million target, I mean, I really do hope we have 20,000 people participating, and we would easily get to that target. So we did it with Wigton. I remember 4.5 years ago we had 30,000 participants. We raised over $5 $5.5 billion. In fact, it was oversubscribed. We got in $10 billion, only needed $5.5 billion. So folks, $100 billion is really a small target. I'm encouraging everybody to lend their support. You know, those who can give $500, please. Those who can invest $10,000, please. Those who can invest $100,000, please, because you'll be doing it for a worthy cause. And this is a program that we really want to encourage. And again, I just, can't help but keep thinking about EPOC and how that made such a huge, huge difference. It's really about discipline, and the accountability and targeting this thing properly. I'd love to come back next year and hear that we way exceeded those targets. We look forward to hearing quarterly going forward how well the program is doing, and hopefully in your second round of raising, it'll be a much more ambitious target. I think we can do $300 to $500 million in the second raise once we've shown people and demonstrated to people that we can be disciplined and prudent with managing their investments. So, Safri, I appreciate your presentation. Paris, your time. Julian, your leadership. Keith, also your leadership. I think it's going to be tremendously successful.
Thank you very much.
And one thing.
Sure, go ahead, Julian.
I do want to make sure everybody knows that the prospectus, the first step in this transparency, the prospectus is up on the Jamaica Social Stock Exchange website. You can go there, you can pull it down. You can pull it down from the STAR website as well. It's extremely detailed. It'll tell you about the governance. It'll tell you a lot about the project. And you can start off there.
Well, folks, as of Monday, I want to see you guys starting your investments. We can knock this off. There's no reason why this needs to stay open for more than a week with only a $100 million target, and it's for a great cause, Jamaica land we love. Well, that's it for today's discussion. I'd like to thank our viewers for tuning in as usual, and your support is always appreciated. Big thanks to our guests today for joining us. We look forward to the future work of Project STAR and trust that you will accomplish great things with this wonderful initiative. To our viewers, be sure to look out for updates from our Virtual Investor Forum by following us on social media. We share things forum-related on our official social media pages. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, Mayberry Investments Limited. And remember, wise investors, keep safe, and slow and steady wins the race. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Is it possible for communities across Jamaica to move forward?
At Project STAR, we believe it is.
Project STAR is working with communities
so we can better ourselves and better our community.
All of us are from here. We belong here. This is our place, and if we don't take care of it, no one else will.
Each of us, all of us,
can work together to make a real difference.
It's actually a wonderful thing, giving persons chances, opportunities.
This is real. All we have to do is just work together.
Everybody. Everybody.
All are we. Let's build together.
One block at a time.
Helping each other to grow.
Everybody forward.
Forward.
Forward and forward.
Everybody forward.
To find out more and to join the movement, visit projectstarja.com. Everybody forward.
The Mayberry Investments Limited Virtual Investor Forum has been the standard for investor education in Jamaica for decades, where top financial minds provide comprehensive insight into the market and ideal investment strategies and opportunities for our clients. Celebrating 37 years of excellence in investment banking. The Mayberry Virtual Investor Forum, investing in Jamaica.